Good morning.
Good morning.
Trying to figure out how to say. I know your name is Lakshimi, but how do you say it properly?
So Lakshimi is the
Lakshimi.
nickname, and my birth name is Lakshmi, or also pronounced Lakshmi.
Lakshmi.
But a lot of people call me Chimi, which is Lakshimi, cut off the LA, Chimi.
The whole conversation today is flamenco. Beautiful dance, obviously. There's a lot of mystery and passion and dance and music and culture behind it. It stems from Andalusia, Spain, right?
Correct. Yeah. Andalusia.
Andalusia, that's how you say it.
Or I'm not sure if it's repronounced differently in English, but
right.
I always say Andalusia.
Andalusia, yes. I mean, I wanted to have this conversation with you because, first of all, I've seen you live and you're a phenomenal dancer. I mean, the amount of passion and emotion and focus you have in the expression of the dance is incredible. It's something that I think everybody should see in their life. I'm sure some people have seen it online or maybe a show they've been to, but seeing it in person and, is beautiful. It's phenomenal. I would love to know what it means for you, because I'm trying to kind of, in a weird way, kind of like have a peek inside your brain when you're moving, when you're dancing, and you're feeling the music. And I understand that it's a unit thing. You have a guitar players or two guitar players, the vocalist, the dance. It's a unity of the whole thing. So, can you give me a little bit of more from your perspective?
Absolutely. There is a definite conversation going on between the core players in flamenco, which are the singer. That's the root player, the first and most important element. From the singing, then you have the guitar and the dancing. And then another important role in flamenco is the hand clapper. I know it sounds silly, but it's like the original drummer in flamenco, right? You have, in a lot of bands, you have a drummer. Well, the hand clapper, the palmero or palmera, they are our drummer. And a lot of times you usually have the singer or another dancer playing the hand claps for you, or like in this case, while I'm dancing. But sometimes you get the opportunity to have someone come in and just do the hand clapping. And there are people who that's all they do.
No kidding.
Yeah, like it's that important.
So you would hire a hand clapper?
Oh, yeah.
How much do they charge?
Right.
I mean, there's a rhythm to it. Of course, you have to know.
That's what it's all about, is that they not only know all the rhythms and the patterns, and they know some tricks that make it sound even more interesting, but they are also extremely precise. And because flamenco is such a rhythmic art form, that precision is important. It makes everything that much more musical. A lot of times I would say to people like, well, if you've seen amateur flamenco, you might not have been that impressed. But if you see the real deal,
yes,
you see then it's just breathtaking. It just brings you right in, because the complexity is beyond a lot of.
So I've read online, just doing some research. Where does it come from? Spain, obviously, Andalusia, like you said, and the cultural influences. Because you see a lot of this Middle Eastern stuff in it. Mm-hmm. You also see this kind of like because I know it's a mixture of the gypsies, right?
Yes.
I heard there's some Jewish prayers or something. I'm like, there's another thing, and then there's the chord progressions are very specific to that music.
Absolutely, yeah. You can definitely see the connection to Arabic and Sephardic.
Yes, Sephardic.
Well, when flamenco was kind of being born, put together, and becoming what it is. Or what it was, because it's constantly evolving, to be honest. But the roots, right, where when it was really starting to create what we study and what we learn and where we are, coming from. There was a melting pot in southern Spain, and so there is a lot of influence from these mix of cultures that were there, and you can see it very easily when you start to look at lyrics, like you said, the chord progressions, the different tones that in how they use their voice, and even in the dancing, you could see different influences, and also you can see, I believe, the influence from Africa, from the because southern Spain is right next to Africa, and at one point, and I think I have other friends. Like our friend in common, Gambis, that is really good at knowing the history and the actual dates and all that. But in the time when this was all coming together, all those cultures were much more present in Spain. There's a lot more of coming and going of different cultures, and so you can see that.
How did you get into this?
Well, I was kind of born into it and I say kind of because my parents weren't flamenco artists when I was growing up, but my mom actually was a flamenco artist. But by the time I was born, she wasn't really doing it much. However, we had family friends who were more active in the flamenco community, and I grew up around flamenco, and I, of course, was drawn to it naturally. My parents are both artists. They weren't doing so much flamenco, but they were doing a lot of other world music. And then, of course, I wasn't surprised. My mom told me that she also did flamenco, and she busted out the pictures and the castanets. I have castanets that were hers way back then, and she was doing that before I was born, and now she gets to kind of relive it with me, which is wonderful. But
so is there a school you go to? Is there like a
well, here in the States, obviously we're more limited to our access. There's a limited access to flamenco, but there are a lot of schools, and there are a lot of opportunities for people to learn flamenco, even virtually now. It really has become a worldwide.
But there are levels. I mean,
absolutely.
Again, like when I watch you and I watch somebody who's doing it it's not the same.
Yes.
There are levels.
Yes.
By the way, there's my wife's aunt again. She invited us to go to somebody's house in a valley.
Love it.
And you go down into the valley here in San Diego. Mm-hmm. And they invite, I guess it's like a 3-day thing where they bring in all these celebrity flamencos from around
you're talking about Fiesta Fin de Verano.
That's what it is, right?
Yeah. I grew up in that, for example.
Oh, yeah.
And so I grew up around flamenco and around flamencos. And luckily, thanks to that festival, that some dear family friends, actually the guy that started it, and it was a couple. The husband was my mom's first friend when she moved to America, because my mom's not from here. And then his wife was Spanish, and they started this a long time ago. It started like with a very small group of people, and then it got more and more popular, and it got bigger. And one thing that that was wonderful that they did is first they brought together Spaniards that lived here, and they came together to do flamenco, and some of them were working flamencos. In other words, they did flamenco as a job, and then there were others that just did it for fun, and they had their day job, or their housewife, but right. Which is also a job, and then when it got bigger, they started bringing people from Spain and also France. There's a lot of flamencos in France as well, and so they would bring flamenco. So when I was a little girl, I was able to see real flamenco, not just watered down flamenco that you learn, from someone that may or may not know what they're doing. And so
what is a real flamenco?
So a real flamenco to me,
is there somebody standing with a stick telling you, "Hey, wrong"?
A real flamenco to me is someone that just has a certain amount of credible knowledge, and that puts their time in to put this knowledge to practice. So whatever you practice, whether it's the guitar or the singing or the dancing or the hand clapping, you have to know, what is this? And it's not so simple where you go, okay, you have to learn this move, that move, and that's in this last move, and now you're done. Flamenco is it's so intertwined with the culture and the cultures that it has been influenced by, that you have to almost breathe that culture to really grasp and
So how would somebody of a different culture?
It's hard. It is. It's really hard, and that's something that I think
because you could be a great dancer,
absolutely.
a great singer, but relating to that, that's I get the culture,
and that's one of the reasons why I moved to Spain when I was 20, because I knew, and my mom, she's so funny. She even told me, she goes, "Well, if you stay here, you're just gonna end up dancing just like everyone else around here," and she was right. And she was right.
I see.
She was right. It's like, no, I have to go to the source. This is, and I could tell you, I was out there, living, I moved there at 20, and luckily I was very moldable still. I'm a young adult, and I learned how to cook over there. I learned how to party over there. I learned how to, I had so much influence from the Andalusian culture because I moved there so young, and I was doing flamenco every day. I got lucky, and maybe my look helped a little bit, and my passion also for flamenco I think also helped, and my honest interest and humility of like knowing that this is something that is so much bigger than me. So I was able to start working even in flamenco out there, and that was what allowed me to stay out there. Because I refused. I did not want to work not in flamenco.
Right. So is this a general Spanish identity?
Absolutely.
Or is it a specific next sect of Spanish?
Absolutely. I mean, there's definitely identity there. And there's people from Spain that are flamencos, and there's people from Spain that aren't flamencos.
Right.
Right. It's like, it is and I guess you could kind of relate it to like, like people out here, for example, that are artists and people who aren't artists.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like it's like a community. Yes. It's a way of being. Right. And so the flamencos out there, they have their way of being, their way of, they like to, do things, even the way of that they like to dress, right. So, so diving into the culture over there was huge. And a game changer. That was everything. And when I would come home and visit, I would usually come home. Since I started to work out there, I would get a month off, and come home to visit family, and also do a little bit of work out here. And I would itch to be back over there. Mm-hmm. That's where I had to be.
Would you say that it's kind of like a Hispanic theater? Or would you? I'm trying to understand what it actually is, because
that's a hard question.
Yeah, exactly.
So out there, what I came across a lot would be people who would be like, it's Gitano. Gitano, it means gypsy, but or now we say Romani or Gitano. You could say Gitano or Romani. No, gypsy now is not politically correct, or because of the bad connotations that.
I see.
So, but Gitano's okay, and so you'd always see this, or I would come across, I should say, the whole fight of like flamenco's Gitano, no, like the Gitanos are responsible for it, and they'd be like, no, it's Spanish, like it's this, like there was this kind of like this war between people. Like it's ours. No, it's ours. And like it's more from Spanish. But I believe, from having maybe a little bit also the perspective of outside, not being born in it's hard to maybe have the same perspective if you are, for example, born in a Gitano family.
I see.
And you're raised or like with parents that do flamenco, like you have a maybe a different perspective than if you kind of see various perspectives from outside of that one. Maybe, I don't know. This is just a guess, but having a little bit more of an outside perspective, I feel like just like grab them like a little taller and go, would you guys stop it? It's from all of you.
I see.
It's from everyone. Can you see? It's not one or the other. It's all of you. And yes, there's like, for lack of a better word, like signatures from like the Gitanos, they have, I feel like they are very responsible for making it mostly what it is. Like they've enriched it a lot. I think partly because they were the pueblo, the people that really embraced it and used it most for a
Right.
number of years.
Right.
Whereas people outside of the Gitano community maybe had other jobs and or they were maybe had other backgrounds in Spanish folk as well. So maybe it was more shared, not as, but at the end of the day, you see influence from both Spanish folk, from the Gitanos that came from their travels and up there, and then also the other cultures that we mentioned earlier, and so I personally believe it's a mix of cultures that all were encountered in southern Spain.
Yes.
And that's kind of where all came together and bubbled and became what it is. And today it is still evolving and it's still being influenced by people today. Even the fact that it's way more international than it was 50 years ago.
Yes. I'm trying to think of when somebody's watching this show, it's musical. That's why I kind of tried to kind of connect it to theater, because there's an acting performance, which is the dancers and the singers and the musicians. There's a whole, it's a show per se, kind of, with music and dancing. But
that's what mostly gets sold. That's what you see mostly in shows. But there's so much more to that. To flamenco, there's history being passed on from generation to generation. That's why the singers, the cante, the song in flamenco is, like I said earlier, is like the root. It was the first aspect of flamenco, and that the fact that they were able to tell what was going on in that moment in Spain, in this case, and then pass it on to the next generation. It was like they were telling history. They're keeping stories alive from one generation to another. They were even educating their people,
yes,
through these songs.
right.
There's.
So would you say that the dancing is secondary? It came after?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Where does the dancing come from?
Well, I mean, it comes from interpreting the song.
But there's a very specific style and look to it.
Yes, right.
Right?
So that's a really good question. I think that there's a mix of influences, and even today you see how the dance is shifting. Now you're seeing a lot of contemporary influence, and if you compare it to how it looked even just 50 years ago, it's a lot older. But a matter of fact, if you were to go, okay, flamenco today, flamenco dance today, flamenco dance 50 years ago, flamenco dance 100 years ago, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, you can see how it's shifted. It's shifting constantly, even though there are obviously certain things that continue that like is past.
Yeah. What are the songs about?
Well, there's
Mostly.
a lot. So, and this is one thing I love most about flamenco is that it basically is about life. It's about life.
Pick a song. Give me some. I'm curious.
Okay. For example,
what's a favorite one of yours to dance to?
There's one that I love when they sing to me. This is Por Soleá, and it talks about losing the warmth of your mother or father. And that one is just like, it just makes me, and it just goes right to my heart, because that's something that we all can relate to. Yes. We all know or fear that lost, and so it's just such a real pain, and to be able to be reminded of it. And then be out there, you become vulnerable. Yeah. But at the same time, it's a beautiful vulnerability because you get to share this sense of grief, or a grief, depending on where you're at in that moment in your life, right? And that one hit me really hard because I was living so far away from my parents. So when I would be dancing the tablao, aka flamenco theater, when they would sing that one to me, it would just be like, like it would just go straight to my heart because of that distance I was experiencing with my parents. And even though they were both alive, I didn't have them right around the corner. I couldn't go drive and see them. I was only seeing them once a year. So that one just hit home. But there's many there, and then again it shifts. Like I feel like flamenco is alive, and it should be alive because it's about life. And in this case, if you're a flamenco, it is your life. Yeah. And you use it as a way to express yourself, to communicate, to grieve, to have fun.
Right.
Like it's just a way to.
I got a funny question for you. Imagine, tell me if this would ever work for you, because you're a performer. Somebody translating those words and singing them in a different language. Would that ever work for you as a performer? Would that hit you the same or no?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I think it could potentially, but if you also spoke that other language, maybe.
Right.
But then at the same time, there's something really curious that happens in flamenco.
Right.
That before I even was able to understand everything they were saying, because mind you, there's a lot of words that are specific to Andalusia. So they're or caló. They use a lot of words that aren't necessarily Spanish. They're from a dialect that's named caló, which is from the Gitanos, or also they could be false words that were kind of invented in this community of flamencos. So they started using certain words to it was kind of like, little words for someone that they would, like their own little code, kind of thing. It. And, but some are actual Romani words. And so before I even understood all of this, and there's always room for learning more. That's why I'm always still with the curious mind to learn more. But even before understanding all the lyrics, what they're saying to me, and sometimes it's just even hard because of how they pronunciate, I could feel it somehow. And I think that is because of the song and the melodies, how they're feeling it. And if you're singing it, you're going to know what you're saying. I mean, even if you...
So you're saying it can transcend the language if the emotion is impactful enough, the performance, or the vocals.
Exactly. Of the vocalists. Right. Of the vocalists.
Yes, of the vocalists.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why it would be a hit or miss, because how are they interpreting it? Are they still putting meaning behind it, or is it just like, I'm going to read this and right? So I think that's
so the interesting thing I've noticed that you have, what are these called? The
castanets.
The castanets,
or the casanuelas.
But there's also the legwork.
Yes.
You're tap dancing. Well, but what is it called?
Zapateo. Yeah.
And there's a.
Or if you want to say in English, footwork. I say footwork for English.
Yeah. And how do you? I mean, there's a connection between this and that, right?
Right. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said earlier, there's a lot. Everything's very rhythmic in flamenco. There's probably 5% or maybe 10% at most that's not rhythmic. That's free or rhythm. Right? Like it's primarily rhythmic. And so we're using our entire body in the rhythm, even if it's focused on the feet, and then maybe the arms in that moment may be less or more connected. So in other words, if I'm doing something rhythmically, my feet, I could just have my arms resting. I could just have them floating. I could have them kind of free of the rhythm, or I could also be doing things with my arms with the rhythm that I'm, doing my feet. So
there's a lot to learn.
There's a lot. Yes, it's a lifetime. It's a lifetime, and that's something that I love about flamenco. It's not like, okay, I did this course and I graduated, now I'm done, and now I know everything. No, as a matter of fact, I think that's the first fault an artist can do, is think that they know everything.
I mean, there's female dancing and then there's male dancing. You have different tools you're working with. You have dresses;
Absolutely.
They don't have dresses.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So but is the training still similar Where
Yes.
does it actually, like, where does it pivot for
Right,
each?
right. Well, I think it just depends on who you decide to study with. So one of my most influential teachers, because he was the first one I went moved to Spain, was a male, and his name is Farruquito, really well known. Anyone that knows flamenco will know him. And also I studied with actually I studied with his family. So I was also studying with his aunt La Faraona, and so studying with him and then studying with her was very different in the sense that like he had all the masculine moves, more masculine moves, and she was very feminine dancing. She had all these feminine moves, and you, so you get thrown a material that can be more masculine or more feminine, and then you either
play with it.
and you play with it,
I got
and
it,
then you
yeah.
and then you make it and. Essentially, you want to make it yours. And this is what I always tell my students, for example, like, you don't have to do exactly how I'm doing it. You have to make it yours. I'm just giving you the vocabulary.
So are you interpreting the song as with your body set differently? Or is there like this is the dance routine for this? Does that make sense?
Right. Yes. Yes and no. I get this question a lot. And sometimes there's moments where it's literal interpretation, but that's because I can understand what they're saying. And like if I understand what they're saying in the moment, or maybe even if I knew ahead of time, sometimes that happens. But then there can be interpretation of the lyrics going on, but there is like a structure to the dances, and so without knowing what they're going to sing, I can already have a structure in mind. Now, also mind you, there are kind of two schools of thought here. There's the more improvised dancer, and there's the more like choreographed dancer. So I leave a lot of room for improvisation. I like to improv a lot, but that's because that's the school I came from. However, I also know how to choreograph a dance and have it from beginning to end, a choreography. And maybe there's a reason why, because I'm going to do a theater performance, and I have a story to tell, or
Right.
you know what I mean? Like there's some kind of.
I'm assuming if you're in a group setting and there's multiple performers, you probably want to choreograph some of it.
Yes, to a certain degree, yes, but you don't have to in flamenco, because if everyone knows the language, then we can all improvise and all be on the same page. Now, if you don't know the language, then we got to work it out. We got to know what's going on, right? We got to, but that's the beauty about flamenco. Another beautiful thing about flamenco, I should say, is that if you know the language, you can. It's a conversation. It's not a choreography. It's a conversation.
You did mention that male vocals, because of the depth and the resonance of their voice, is used to be more attractive to you for performance.
Yeah.
But now you start appreciating female vocalists as well.
Yeah. I think I have definitely been able to be more attracted to female voices in more recent years, but I've always preferred male vocalists behind me. I just feel like maybe that, just the depth of the deeper sound, the lower tones, and I don't know, maybe it's also just energetically, like they bring a different energy.
Yes. Do you prefer more? I'm just gonna go for vocals because that's mine.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Do you prefer more of a husky, airy, and because they do a lot of that air, right, versus the clearer tones,
right? I kind of liked always the husky more, but now it's starting to shift, and I think it's just, and it's not that I like it less. I think it's now I just like when singers are when they're complete. What I mean by that is that they have obviously a good voice where they're going to hit the tones right. They're not going to. But they also have a very strong sense of rhythm.
Yes.
As a dancer, that's really important.
Of course.
And then also, this is something very interesting. But over the years, being able to understand myself more, I've been able to see how important it is. How that the actual personality of the person,
100%,
which is, I sometimes wish it wasn't that way, but it is that way, and the reason why is because I'm sensitive to the energy behind me.
100%.
So if that person's
Yes.
back there like with this like and even if it's in his head or her head, like, oh, like whatever, blah 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 blah, like just criticizing
It
or like this,
affects you.
I can feel it. I feel it. I
Yes.
could feel it, and it will make me tense up. It will
That's
make
what
me
exactly what I
feel
was thinking. Yeah.
uncomfortable. And then when I have someone that's behind me that they're there with love,
Do you do anything to let them because you know it affects you? So
oh
do
yeah,
you do before a performance or something? Do you do something to talk to them or do anything to get them? Is there anything like that, like an energy you're trying to kind of
I think I've
make sure that
had
they're on the right place
right.
mentally?
Yeah, I think I have definitely without thinking about doing that. I have done that, like just reflecting, like, oh yeah, I could see myself like trying to just like get everyone together and be all on the, like you said, on the same page. But you can't really control nor know where each individual's at. And that's the hard part. And I've learned in recent years that I can't just depend on a good voice. I have to depend also on good people. And that's something that I learned very recently where
As a master, you're
thanks for the compliment. I don't know.
well, you are. If somebody's watching you, okay, and you're in the middle of it, the vocalist, you're feeling that whatever they did, they hit the wrong note. That's
Yeah.
okay. Whether it's literally the wrong note, emotionally the wrong note. Um, are you in, like, for example, like me? I know, like, I don't let it get to me already. I'm in a place where I'm able to quickly not let it get to me and continue doing what I'm doing. I'm leading. I take
Yes.
charge of it because I don't have a choice.
Right.
'Cause
Well,
now-
that's a professional for you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So you do that.
I do that. I feel like though that I still haven't gotten to the point, but hopefully I could, where I could completely emotionally block it out. I feel like it creates some kind of barrier, and what I mean by that is a barrier with my best version, with the version that's beyond me. So I think the most magical moments that I have, it's not because I'm a genius and I do these steps amazingly. I think it's because energetically I'm able to open up and something beyond me is able to give. And that's why a lot of times when I have these most magical moments, I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for being able to share that moment with not only the people behind me that allowed that to happen and that were part of that, but also the people in front of me. They're also part of it. They're also part of that magical moment.
So can you remember, I don't know, a few shows, one or two, maybe you can name that really stuck with you? Because you know what, that was a fantastic show.
Yeah.
I was in the zone.
Yeah.
I killed it.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
What can you?
I
do you
do. I
remember
do.
that? And you're like,
Oh yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
that I know exactly what it was.
Yeah.
You probably been analyzing it.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, I do realize those moments. And again, I'm super grateful because I feel it's out of just me and my brain thinking of, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. No, it's letting go, surrendering to the moment, allowing my tools. Obviously, my tools allow me to express. I wouldn't be able to do what I do without them. So all that knowledge in the brain, it was important to have its hours of training, but I feel like it's definitely a beautiful interchange that happens between all people present. And again, that's why I thank everyone present for allowing that moment to happen, because I feel like if there are such things as other beings, other spirits, that kind of make it even that much more magical, they're not going to come around and hang out if there's bull going around.
Out.
You know what I mean? They're only going to come out when everyone's like has that open heart for it. So and that's how I felt, at least in these most amazing moments. Now I must also say though that they tend to also be backed up with me putting my hours in, me putting my shoes on and getting in and having an intimate relationship with my dancing. If I let that go, then it's really hard to get to these spaces because I'm not the first one that doesn't have the open heart ready to go.
Yes.
So I need to also make sure that I'm giving love to my art, to my
Yes.
craft. in all
What does that
levels.
dress code look like for males and females? What do you can you break it down for me? Like this is a must for female flamenco dancer. This is a must for male flamenco dancer.
Well, there's traditional like
Right.
looks. And that's of course changing a lot right now. So, for example, traditionally the female would have a dress, usually wear flowers or polka dots, and then the males would traditionally usually be in solid colors, tend to be black, red, white color
Right.
tones.
Shoes.
Yes, both of us have both the flamenco shoes, so they tend to have boots and the flamenco boots, and we have the flamenco shoe that has the nails on the bottom, and
Oh, those are nails.
they're like little tiny nails.
I
Yeah,
see.
yeah. That
So it's not like tap shoes.
no, because it's a small area of the shoe, so it's on the heel and the toe, the tip of the toe that you had the nails, and then part of the ball of the foot. For example, this is the ball of the foot. Part of it is not nails. It's like just a sole. It's like a certain kind of sole. I wish I had my shoe on me so I could show you.
Right,
But,
right.
but so there's definitely a very specific wardrobe that we use, and then we have very specific props that we use, like the castanets that we talked about earlier, the fan, the females use that a lot. But nowadays it's really opening up. And what I mean by that is not only is the wardrobe changing, what's kind of popular right now, you don't see so much floral and polka dots anymore. You see more solid colors. You see even less ruffles, like that's really typical in flamenco, the ruffled skirts. But now you see not so many ruffles, and it almost looks, a lot of people in recent years are wearing these dresses that almost look like robes. It's kind of like a thing this past year or two. I personally like things that inspire me and make me feel like, oh yeah, let's go. I like a lot of sparkly stuff. I like sparkles and things that are that just look very sharp, and I do like solids a lot, like solid colors more so than patterns. So that can be very personal in each dancer, like what attracts them more for their wardrobe. But also another thing that has shifted in recent years is that males for the first time are dancing with skirts and long dresses on. Like the bata de cola is a traditional dress that only females wore, and now you have some males wearing it, and which is great. I mean, the fact that they're able to express that this is how they want to express themselves, and there's some males out there that do it really good.
Really?
Or the manton, the big manton de Manila, traditionally that was only the females dancing with him, and now you see males that will bust them out in their
What does the older
dance.
generation, the ones who were the pioneers of this stuff,
Oh,
what do they think of this whole new thing that's happening?
Most of them usually criticize it. They're like, that's not right. But but you get I think it really comes down to that person's ability to be more open-minded or less open-minded. I mean, I could understand the part of like wanting to reserve the tradition, but the thing is that flamenco is it's a live art form. It's going to evolve naturally. And if we try to keep it how it was 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, it would be probably more and more difficult to relate to it because we're in a different life.
Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed, for example, take the music industry, the expression of the vocalist has become very different from the expression of the vocalist, let's say from the 50s or 40s or 70s, right? And so it's a different kind of character that's coming out. Both are crying, but it's a different kind of cry. So I'm wondering if the older generation sees that in the newer generation, or is the new generation trying to give justice to the old? Do you see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, it's
are
complex.
they taking it somewhere else? Are they, like, when an older generation watches the new generation's dance, they're thinking, yeah, it's not really what we feel like.
Yeah.
Does that exist?
Yeah, I think it really is just a reflection of how life is shifting and changing. I think because at the end of the day, any artist, not just flamenco, but any artist, they are using their art form, right? Be it jazz, be it flamenco, be whatever genre that you're doing. You're using that vocabulary to then express yourself,
Right.
right? To whether it's something that you learned and you're like, oh, I learned to express this, or I have these tools and this is how I'm feeling right now. Right. So I feel like it's kind of inevitable for these shifts to happen because our lifestyle is different. And I even noticed it actually in my own flamenco. Check this out. This is really curious. When I was living in Spain, I was able to walk and or bike to work or, to the tablao where I would perform. And as a matter of fact, I would bike or walk everywhere because I lived in downtown Sevilla. And so that, after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, well, that creates a different pace. Your day to day has a certain pace.
Right.
Now I come back here, I move over here, and now I have to use a car to go everywhere. And my pace changed. And I saw that change in my dancing.
But doesn't that give ill justice to the art form? Does
Yes,
that make sense?
I agree. And that's
Because the
why
whole point of people coming watching this thing, they're like, they don't want to see a modern version of this thing. They want to say, I want to experience that culture.
Right.
Not American culture,
So
right? For example.
Yeah, right.
You know what?
Yeah.
Isn't that the
Well,
point?
and that's why for so many years I always felt like, I got to go back. So it wasn't until I realized like, no, this is a pace that I don't want to embrace. And also don't forget, like, what is what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to say. So not getting caught up in whatever is thrown to you, but making decisions on how you want to live your life. And so for me, it was an important realization because it made me realize that I can't be in the American go North American go brain set
because you're trying to bring them into your world.
That's not what
the way around.
Yeah, and plus that's not really what I want either. That doesn't feed me.
Yes,
doesn't feed me artistically. Doesn't feed me in any level. So I had to go like, I don't want that pace. I don't want this having to run everywhere. So it's been a process to figure out how to live here.
So how do you do it?
It's hard. I'm figuring it out still. I feel homesick. I feel homesick. I miss living over there, and luckily I'm fortunate enough to be able to go there every year. I go there every year, and I'm out there for a couple months, and keep my relationships alive out there and my work out there as well. And so I'm very, very grateful to be able to do that because everyone can't do that. So that's wonderful. But it also was a whole lifetime out there as well. So that I did bring that with me, that I do have that culture. Like I was saying earlier, I cook like a Spaniard. It's like, that is my culture now. So
is it still thriving in Spain?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it is. I think that there's a lot of different niches, right? And naturally, because there's a lot of it. But it is thriving. And I think one of the reasons why it's thriving, because there is plenty of it. And that's how things thrive. And that's one of the things I've been trying to cultivate out here is if I'm going to be out here, I need to bring more flamenco here.
Yes. Do you teach?
So I do teach.
You
yes.
do, eh?
I teach. And I also founded a nonprofit organization that's basically dedicated to doing that, bringing flamencos together.
What's it called?
Alma Flamenca.
Alma Flamenca.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we've been running Peña Flamenca Carmen Amaya. It's like a flamenco club. Peña means club. Peña Flamenca, flamenco club. Carmen Amaya. That's the name of a very famous dancer back in the 50s. Particular, she was really well known internationally. And so we named the Peña after her. And and it's based here in San Diego. So most of our activities are here, but we are trying to branch out to LA because we have a couple of members that are from LA. So the club, you can be a member of it. And that just means you kind of have a more intimate relationship with the club where you have monthly access to these.
What age is a good age to start for girls, boys?
For flamenco in general, any age. I mean,
any
right
age.
Away. A matter of fact, the earlier the better. I mean, it's like language, right? If you start to study a language in your 20s, it's not nearly as good if you start studying when you're 5 or when from the get go.
What does a typical lesson look like? What does it cost? First of all, is there a dress? Do they dress up a certain way? What is it?
Yeah, some teachers will want a strict dress code. Typical is all black, so like black pants and shirt for the boys and black skirt and leotard for the girls, or top of some sort. But you don't see that more and more. That's a little old school. I appreciate it though. I was in New Mexico. It was a few years ago on a residency where I was out there performing for a whole summer, and they had a dress code. It was like, when we're in rehearsals, you have to have a black skirt and a black, right? That and I appreciate that. It's
I mean, that makes sense.
It does. It does make sense. There is a lot of the tradition that I think should be remembered and honored.
No, plus you're trying to get into a mental state.
Exactly.
If you wear whatever, then it's like how you're trying to help yourself get into that state faster.
Yeah, exactly. Just like when you meditate,
Right, exactly.
they recommend that you have your little space for it, and it makes sense that you kind of go into that space a little quicker. It's a little bit more efficient, so it makes sense completely. And that's why it is important to not forget or lose sight of where did it come from? Where have we come from? That's really important, I think, in any art. Even.
So, what do you do with the foundation? What are some programs?
Well, we do monthly events, and right now we have kind of 2 home bases. We use either the Normal Heights Community Center or the Turquoise, which is actually Cafe Bar Europa in Pacific Beach. We do most of our shows at the Turquoise. I call it the Turquoise. It's kind of the nickname for Cafe Bar Europa. Because it has a bar and a restaurant where people can enjoy eating or drinking before or during the show, or not during, but before and after, and they have a nice little space. It creates a little bit more ambiance for flamenco in general. So we prefer to use that space for most of the performances. And then we also have events where it will be maybe a lecture where they are talking about the history of this or that. And we use a community center for that. Or if we're doing something where we want just a little bit more space, then we'll use the community center for that as well. But we have a website. We just got a second page added to it dedicated to the Peña, because that's basically the most active part of Alma Flamenca is the Peña Flamenca that does the monthly events. And last month and this month, we're doing 2 events. Which is a first. So we have a show, and then we also are hosting a workshop, a class. And we are doing that because we have 2 artists in residency. They're 2 male flamenco singers. And so we're like, we need to take advantage that they're here and let's do a little bit more. And luckily we've been able to do that.
What does it mean they're in residency? What are they doing?
So that means that they're here on an artist visa for X amount of time. So they in this case, they are both on a year artist visa. So, and the residency means that they're living here. They're here. They do move around, but because naturally they have other.
Where are they from?
They are both from southern Spain. One is from Sevilla and one is from Jerez. The one from Sevilla is actually a dear friend of mine from over 20, 25 years ago. And we've toured the world together. We worked many, many years together. And so I'm kind of responsible for him coming out here.
I see.
And then the other one, I met in more recent years, but we both have very close friends in common in Sevilla, and so that was the connection. And he's great. They're both wonderful, and I've been working, of course, more and more with the one from Jerez in more recent years now. Ever since we made the connection and he came out here. But
how often do you perform?
It varies, just like probably most artists that do live performance.
Is there a limit? Would you say, like, I can only do 3 times a week or something?
No, I don't have that in my head. You know why? Because when I was in Spain, I was performing 6 nights a week, 2 to 3 shows a night. So I would get 1 day off a week.
And how long is each show?
And sometimes that day off, I would use it to go work somewhere else. So I, at one point I did, because I was there working in the tablaos. It wasn't just one, but for over 10 years. So, this is like at one point, especially when I started to close the show and have a little bit more of a more important role in the show, I decided, okay, I do need to have my day off. I need to make sure I take a day, at least one day, to recuperate. Because
there's more important roles and less important roles.
More important rules or less important rules for time off?
No, to performers. For performers.
Well, I think when it comes to performing, the more important things, or like the ones that I would say I want for sure, I want to take this one for sure, is it always comes to two things most of the time: the other artists that are involved, because that means a better or worse performance. I hate to say worse, but a more euphoric performance or not so euphoric performance.
You mean the singers?
Yeah, the singers and guitarists.
And the guitarists.
And the guitarists, because there's guitarists that accompany amazingly. They just they bring the best out of you.
Yes.
And there's some guitarists that you're maybe struggling with because they're kind of lost, and you kind of have to try to figure out how to get them on the same page with you.
I see.
So it is a very group oriented thing,
Well, what do you think of what we talked about earlier about that show that they're doing out in the valley over there? What is that called?
Oh yeah, Fiesta Fin de Verano.
Yes. What do you think of that thing?
I love it. I think it's great. I think it's great because it brings the artist and the public in the same space.
Yeah.
And
usually you don't?
You don't get that always. And what I mean by the same space is not just we're all in the same room. I mean, like, we are eating and drinking together. It's more easy to have a conversation with the artists, or because we are hanging out for a whole weekend together. It's like we're camping. Yeah. It's like a flamenco camp out, right? And so
you don't drink before a show?
No.
Never.
No.
It's not traditionally.
Well, I have, but not like drink. You know what I mean? Like a little buchito, like just a little.
But is it part of a thing that we take a shot or something with?
Yeah, that it could be sometimes. Like especially with certain people, they really like. There's some compañeros, some coworkers of mine that they always have their little chupito before they go out. Like, oh, I like it to warm up my throat. That's very common.
Right.
But the dancers, or at least me, I usually don't drink before I perform. I like to be very focused, like clear mind. Like I don't want to be I don't want to have an altered state for performance. I feel like,
so you have certain rituals? Unless
it's informal and like it's kind of impromptu, then it's different. But when I'm performing, I really want to be in a.
So what other rituals do you do?
Warm up, like warm up the body. That's a really important one now, especially since I'm older and I'm not in my 20s anymore. But for me, it is really important to warm up, make sure that everything is ready to move. And if I can get away with it, I like to do some breathing because I meditate. I like to meditate, so that helps me a lot to just really ground myself. I'm naturally very energetic, so that grounding for me is really really nice.
Yes.
It really helps. Yeah, so I really appreciate having that extra time to just like bring it down a notch, and and then because the high energy is going to come out. I mean, like it's like it's just my nature.
Yes.
Like, there's no way of holding that one back. So it grounds me more. It helps. It definitely helps. Yeah. And then of course the obvious, get the dress on, or the pants. If I'm dancing in pants, get the makeup on.
You dance with pants sometimes?
Sometimes I dance with pants. Yeah. And I like dancing with pants a lot. Mm-hmm. That actually, Carmen Amaya was that I mentioned earlier. She was the female dancer that made that popular, and that kind
For some reason I always pictured that dancing with the dress is the wow effect, because you can do stuff with it.
Yeah,
and you can't do anything with pants.
That's right. Yeah, though it does allow you to do different things. So it allows you to do things that are more masculine, which can be beautiful without trying to be a man,
Got it,
obviously. But like it, it's because we all, at the end of the day, we all have a masculine and feminine side.
Yes, of course.
We do, right? And so I can bring out that more masculine side of me, that more, I like to say aggressive. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but that I could pull that out a little bit more, and that so that's nice to be able to experiment, explore that energy in me, right? And that it comes out more with the pants.